You wake up in the early hours when the first light starts touching your eyelids, painting them gold. Outside, something stirs. You turn to find your wife still sleeping beside you, her black hair fanned around her like a raven's wing, her breath soft against the rough linen of your bed. You gently nudge her awake. It's time, you murmur, knowing she understands the unspoken word, work. Together, you rise, hands finding each other in the darkness, and move to the courtyard where your daughter is already stirring, her eyes bright with the promise of a new day. Your son is still asleep, his young body curled tight in the corner, seeking warmth in the chill pre-dawn hours. You pull him close, whispering encouragement and affection. He opens his eyes, startled, and you smile, kissing the top of his head. Today is just another day, yet it holds within it the seeds of stories you will tell when the Nile has claimed another flood and the fields are rich with new growth, of legends whispered by the elders, tales of gods and kings, of mythical beasts and battles against the forces of chaos. Today is ordinary, yet extraordinary. For here in this humble village on the edge of the great river, life eats and flows like the tides of the sea, dictated by the rhythms of nature and the blessings of the gods. This is the time when the Nile begins to swell, and you, the pharaoh, must prepare for what lies ahead. The river's yearly inundation, the heart of Egyptian life, is both blessing and bane. You have been watching the river for signs, consulting the priests, reading the skies, and the news is grave. The flood this year will be great. Already the Nile is encroaching upon the land, turning farmlands into swamps, forcing villagers to abandon their homes and flee. Many are coming to your city, hoping for refuge. Soon the waters may rise even higher, threatening to engulf the city itself. Even the Great Pyramids seem dwarfed by the muddy surge, and the people fear. They come to you, the pharaoh, their leader, desperate for guidance. They ask you, what shall we do? They look to you for direction, for strength. It is a heavy burden to bear, but one you must carry. You, the pharaoh, are not merely a ruler. You are also a father, a husband, a man, and like all men, you feel the weight of responsibility crushing down upon you, threatening to smother you in the stifling heat of the moment. However, there is no one else. No one else can do what you must do. So you draw strength from somewhere deep within you, steeling yourself for the task ahead. You know what must be done. The dams and levees are old, and repairing them will take time and many hands. The villagers cannot wait. You gather your advisors, the brightest minds in the kingdom, and set them to work, designing solutions. They propose building new levees further from the riverbank, raising the existing ones, reinforcing the weak spots. You listen patiently, weighing their words, understanding the gravity of each decision. Finally, you speak, issuing commands, dispatching engineers and laborers to the threatened areas. You oversee the construction of new levees, the reinforcement of existing ones, and the evacuation of those living in the path of the rising waters. The city buzzes with activity as everyone works together to protect their home. But you know that no matter what you do, the river will test you, and there will be losses. You watch as the river rises, swallowing the land, creeping closer and closer to the city walls. Each day brings new challenges, new dangers, but also new opportunities to display courage, compassion, and wisdom. You lead by example, working alongside your people, sharing their hardships, comforting the frightened, praising the brave. As the river peaks and begins to recede, you survey the damage, the lost homes, the drowned fields, the weary faces of your people. Grief and anger war within you, but you push them down, focusing on the task at hand. There is rebuilding to be done, lives to be restored. You, the pharaoh, have faced the fury of the river and emerged stronger. Now you must lead your people through the long process of recovery, knowing that the next flood will come again, and you will be ready. You wake up before sunrise, the faint light filtering through the latticework of your window. The sounds of the city slowly awakening fill the air, the chatter of merchants preparing for the day's trade, the rumble of carts on the paved streets, the distant call to prayer from a temple you can't quite see. Unlike the pharaoh, you are not burdened with the fate of an empire. The world's problems seem distant, unreal. Your life here is simpler, quieter. Still, there is a deep satisfaction in being part of something bigger than yourself, feeling the pulse of a civilization beating in your veins. You dress, smoothing out the creases in your linen robe. The cotton is fine and cool against your skin. Glancing at your wife, you see that she too is awake, her dark eyes shining in the dim light. Are you ready? She asks, her voice lilting like the song of a dove. You nod, taking her hand in yours, and she squeezes it reassuringly. The market bustles with activity. People from all over the empire have brought their goods to sell, creating a vibrant mix of colors, textures, and sounds. Exotic animals from far-off lands, incense from the south, wine from the west, and fine clothes from the north. There are farmers selling grain, laborers looking for work, artisans displaying their wares, fishermen offering fresh catches, and beggars hoping for a handout. There is a wide range of people, a microcosm of the empire itself. You dodge between stalls piled high with dates, figs, grapes, and pomegranates, their skins glistening in the sun. The scent of spices fills the air, mingled with the sound of bartering. You pause at a stall where a wizened old woman sits surrounded by piles of brightly colored scarabs. The intricate carvings catch your eye and you pick one up, turning it over in your hands. "How much?" you ask, knowing full well that the price is negotiable. The old woman smiles, her eyes twinkling behind her cataract-filled eyes. "A fair price for a fair customer," she says, naming a sum. You counteroffer and she considers it before accepting. The transaction complete, you tuck the scarab away, a souvenir of your visit. As the sun climbs higher in the sky, you buy a sweet coconut candy bar from a Nubian merchant and enjoy it while watching a troupe of acrobats perform for a crowd of awestruck onlookers. A group of men and women leap and tumble through the air, defying gravity with their daring feats. You applaud, joining in the excited murmurs of the crowd. Feeling the heat of the sun on your back, you decide to seek some shade. You find a cool respite in the shadow of a massive statue of the goddess Hathor, her image serene and calming. Kneeling before the statue, you offer a silent prayer, asking for her blessings on your journey home. With the midday heat at its peak, you leave the market, deciding to explore the city a bit more before returning to the familiar comforts of your own neighborhood. Perhaps you'll find more treasures waiting to be discovered at the end. If you were to travel back in time to ancient Egypt, there's a good chance you wouldn't be met by a desert wasteland, but by a bustling, thriving society. It's all thanks to one incredible ruler. Now let's go back in time to explore. Welcome to my channel. Now imagine the same land but grander, busier. The river still flows, but the monuments have grown. The gods are no longer just spoken of. They are carved in stone, painted in vibrant color, and worshipped in temples that stretch toward the sky. And among the names whispered in these times, one rises again and again. He was called Usamata Setapena, but history remembers him best as Ramses II, or even more simply, Ramses the Great. He lived in the 13th century BC, during Egypt's New Kingdom. When the civilization reached its greatest power and wealth, he reigned for over 60 years, an astonishing span of time in any age, and left behind more than statues and temples. He left behind a legacy of ambition, endurance, and spectacle. But let's begin not with the grand, but with the everyday. Ramses was not born a god, but he was born to become one. As a boy, he would have been educated in the arts of leadership, reading hieroglyphs, commanding troops, offering sacrifices to the gods. His father Seti had begun grooming him early. Ramses was named crown prince by the time he was just a teenager, and before long, he was leading military campaigns into foreign lands. There was never much doubt this was a king in the making. Pharaoh Ramses commanded not just armies, but image. He understood something vital, that to rule Egypt was also to appear to rule Egypt. His statues were taller, his inscriptions longer, his likeness carved and painted more often than any ruler before him. In cities like Thebes, at Abu Simbel, deep in the south, he had two great temples carved directly into a mountainside. One is for himself. The other, remarkably, is for his beloved queen Nefertari, one of the rare Egyptian queens to be honored so equally in stone. There were messages: two gods, I am your servant; two enemies, I am your equal; to his people I will live forever. And yet, Ramses was not merely a builder. He was also a warrior, though the realities of his warfare were less glorious than the inscriptions suggest. Perhaps his most famous military campaign was the Battle of Kadesh against the Hittite Empire. It is one of the earliest battles in history for which we have detailed records. The battle was complex, chaotic, and ultimately incomplete. But in true Ramses fashion, the official Egyptian accounts paint it as a dazzling triumph, with the pharaoh single-handedly turning the tide of battle through bravery and divine favor. In truth, the fighting ended in something closer to a stalemate, but what followed was perhaps even more important: a peace treaty. The Treaty of Kadesh, signed between Egypt and the Hittites, is often considered one of the first known international peace agreements. It was not written in haste. It was not carved in fear. It was a calculated step towards stability. Back home, Ramses focused on legacy. He fathered dozens, perhaps over 100 children, though the exact number is lost in time. He outlived many of them. He also ruled so long that generations of Egyptians knew no other pharaoh. For them, Ramses was not just a man or even a king. He was time itself. Imagine walking the streets of Pyrameses during his reign. The city hums with life markets, scribes, temples, workshops. Every wall bears his name. Every monument whispers his achievements. His name becomes almost a prayer. And yet, even Ramses could not escape the slow erosion of time. When he died, likely in his 90s, his body was wrapped in linen and laid in a tomb deep in the Valley of the Kings. But his rest was not eternal. Tomb robbers came. Later, priests, trying to preserve what they could, moved his mummy to safer places. Eventually, it was discovered in modern times, weather darkened, but still bearing the face of the man who once ruled an empire. Today, you can see him in a museum. His body, quiet now, still, somehow kingly. And as you look upon him, a strange thought might cross your mind. In a way, he got what he wanted. Not eternal life, perhaps, but eternal memory. The sheer volume of monuments dedicated to Ramses is staggering. Over 100 of them have been found, bearing his name, image, or achievements. Some are small, some monumental. But what threads them together is the story of one pharaoh's obsession with eternity. How does one man get so many monuments dedicated to him? Well, partly by being pharaoh for a very long time. Ramses II held the throne for about 66 years, longer than any other Egyptian ruler except perhaps Queen Elizabeth. And while she's the longest reigning monarch in world history, her impact on England's monuments is nowhere near that of Ramses on Egypt's. He built new temples, expanded existing ones, and his image was placed everywhere, in newly constructed places and in older ones, too often carved over previous rulers. The Temple of Abu Simbel alone took decades to complete, though it's unclear if Ramses began it himself or if it was his father Seti. Still, it's clear who it was made for. By the end of Seti's reign, he had been deified, becoming one of the gods he worshipped. The temples reflect this, with one showing him smiting his enemies as if they are gods, another depicting him as a god reborn in the sky. This was part of a trend, too. During the New Kingdom, several pharaohs claimed divine parentage, making them both king and god at the same time. And Ramses, with his long reign and focus on monumental building, is the perfect example of this era. Of course, none of this would have been possible without the prosperity that Ramses oversaw. Ancient Egypt is often considered the wealthiest civilization in the ancient world, and much of that wealth came from the pharaohs. They were considered divine, so anything they owned was owned by the gods. This included farms and estates, cattle and crops, gold and grain, artisans and architects, basically anything they could take their hands on. However, Ramses was the only pharaoh to truly take advantage of the system. He used his divine status to grow Egypt's borders and protect trade routes across the Mediterranean. It's believed that he brought Egypt to its greatest territorial extent, pushing as far west as the Atlantic Ocean and north into Syria. Under his guidance, the Egyptian economy boomed. He rebuilt cities, improved infrastructure, promoted trade, and built factories to manufacture goods. He even minted his own currency, an innovation for the time period. It's because of this prosperous reign that he was able to hire such a large workforce, allowing him to build so many monuments during his lifetime. We don't know exactly how many there were, but historians estimate that there were around 100 scattered throughout Egypt. And while many have been destroyed by natural disasters or the hands of men, 24 remain today. They show us just how ambitious Ramses truly was and how he managed to carve his name in stone, in blood and in bone. Of all of Ramses's monuments, few are as famous as the colossal statue at the entrance to Abu Simbel. It is over 65 feet high, carved directly from the sandstone cliffs. It depicts Ramses as a lion-like god, with the body of a man and the head of a lion. Lions were seen as symbols of strength and courage, qualities Ramses clearly wanted to be associated with. The statue is meant to intimidate, and it surely did, frightening those who crossed the border to do battle with the Egyptians. But it also frightened the earth itself. In 1964, an earthquake struck, causing one of the statue's noses to collapse. It's now missing, though rumors persist that it was destroyed by an invading force. A more likely culprit is wind erosion. It's hard to say, but the damage speaks to the hubris of the monuments. Ramses wanted them to last forever, and yet the sands of time are slowly wearing them down. Perhaps that's why the discovery of his tomb was such a sensation. It proved that even pharaohs eventually succumbed to the inevitable. It was found in 1826 by an Italian explorer, Giovanni Battista Belli. It's since been looted, with several artifacts ending up in museums across Europe. The irony is not lost on historians. The pharaoh who tried so hard to conquer death is now reduced to fragments and scattered relics. Yet as long as there are visitors wandering the halls of Abu Simbel or gazing up at Madame Ramses the Great will endure. He may have failed to cheat death, but he conquered memory. In the span of 60 years, Ramses II fundamentally reshaped Egypt. He expanded its borders, built massive infrastructure projects, and designed more monuments than any of his predecessors. But his most enduring legacy might be how he presented himself. Other rulers may have done more or achieved greater victories, but few understood the power of self-promotion as well as Ramses. His face is on everything from obelisks to statues to temples. Even his enemies marveled at his accomplishments. And when you think about it, that's the ultimate victory. Ramses is remembered as one of history's great builders, a supreme commander, and the second longest reigning monarch ever. Sure, the Hittites beat him in the Battle of Kadesh, and sure, his nose is missing, but no one's talking about that anymore. Instead, we left in awe of the monuments he created and the lengths to which one man could go to make his name immortal. And hey, if you want to learn more about Egypt's greatest pharaoh, well, then you're in luck. In the ancient world, there was no clear line between the spiritual and the material. Religion was a living force. The Egyptian civilization is a perfect example of this. Their faith wasn't just about beliefs. It was a way of life. It colored their art, influenced their leaders, and shaped their view of the cosmos. But imagine if you could step back in time and explore the heart of this faith, to walk through massive stone temples, to see ceremonies that haven't been witnessed in millennia. That's what we're offering you today. Welcome to our channel where we bring history to life. Today we're stepping into the realm of the ancient Egyptians, a time when temples weren't just places of worship, they were gateways to the divine. Before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button. More history awaits with every click. Picture this, you're standing in the middle of a bustling village in ancient Egypt. The year is 2500 BCE, and the pharaoh is life here revolves around the Nile, its floods, its bounty. The villagers are preparing for the annual festival of Wepwet, a minor local deity associated with chaos. He's depicted with the head of a wolf, symbolizing his connection to the wilderness. In their simple houses, families are making offerings, small gifts of grain or fruit or the first fruits of the harvest. These aren't grand sacrifices, but they're sincere. Each gift is a prayer for protection, a hope for good fortune in the coming year. As the day of the festival approaches, anticipation builds. Women are weaving new tapestries with images of men are sharpening their tools, readying them for the celebrations. Children are learning songs and dances in his honor. On the day of the festival, everyone gathers. The village square has been transformed. A small shrine has been erected, adorned with flowers and burning incense. In the center is a statue of Wepwat, not imposing but strangely captivating. The villagers gather before him, not out of fear, but out of respect, out of love. The ceremony begins. First there are prayers, words of gratitude, supplications for help. Then comes the procession. Men carry offerings to the shrine. Women follow with flowers and incense. The children dance, singing songs of Wepwat, their voices echoing through the square. The climax of the festival is the feast. Everyone partakes in a meal blessed by the priest. The sense of community is overwhelming. For a moment, there is nothing but togetherness, faith, and the promise of a bountiful harvest. The ancient Egyptians weren't just farmers, they were also explorers, builders, and scholars. One of their most enduring legacies is the pyramids, silently standing as testaments to human ingenuity. But the pyramids weren't just tombs, they were also religious structures. The Egyptians believed that when the pharaoh died, he became a god. And as gods, they needed to be treated as such. So instead of saving for an afterlife, the Egyptians created one in their own image, complete with palaces, gardens, and most importantly, temples. These temples weren't like any others. They were grander, more elaborate, designed not just to house the gods, but to elevate them. Let's look at the Temple of Karnak, dedicated to the Theban triad, Amun-Mut, and Chans. This temple complex covers over 200 acres, making it the largest religious structure ever built. Imagine walking through its massive gates, feeling the weight of thousands of years pressing down on you. Inside, you'd find a series of courts, each more spectacular than the last. There would be towering columns decorated with intricate carvings of pharaohs making offerings to the gods. There would be hypostyle halls with acres of flat roofs supported by hundreds of papyrus bundle columns. And there would be the sacred lake, a body of water surrounded by lush vegetation, used for ritual purification. But the grandeur of Karnak wasn't just in its size, it was also in its symbolism. Every pillar, every statue, every carving had a deeper meaning. Take, for instance, the famous Red Chapel. It's a small shrine within a shrine dedicated to the pharaoh Thutmose III. But look closely at the walls. They're covered with scenes from his military campaigns, each one designed to convey a message. They're not just stories, they're propaganda. They're meant to remind visitors of the pharaoh's power and glory. Now, let's move from Thebes to Abydos. This was another important religious center in Egypt, home to a temple dedicated to Osiris, the god of the dead. Unlike Karnak, the Temple of Osiris was a place of quiet contemplation, a place to reflect on life and death. As you entered the temple, you would have passed through a series of symbolic gates, each representing a different stage of the journey to the afterlife. There would have been the House of Judgment, where the dead were weighed against the feather of truth, and there would have been the Hall of the Good and the Bad, where the souls of the righteous were celebrated. But the highlight of Abydos would have been the Assyrian, a large rectangular chamber that housed a massive statue of Osiris. It was said that this statue was so powerful that anyone who touched it would be granted eternal life. Finally, let's talk about Luxor. Once known as Thebes, this city was considered the center of the universe by the ancient Egyptians. Its main temple, the Temple of Amun, was so grand that it dwarfed Karnak and Abydos. Sadly, much of it has fallen into ruin, but that doesn't diminish its importance. Walking through the remains of Luxor is like stepping into a dream. You can still see the outline of the Holy of Holies, the innermost sanctum of the temple where the presence of Amen was said to be the strongest. And you can still see the two massive obelisks that once stood in the center of the courtyard, monuments to the pharaohs who built them. Imagine witnessing the procession of Amen, the supreme god of the Egyptians. The streets would have been lined with cheering crowds, each hoping to catch a glimpse of the divine. At the center of the procession would have been the sacred bark, a huge boat carried on the shoulders of priests. It was believed that the boat was actually being rowed by divine oarsmen, and the sight of it moving through the streets was considered miraculous. The bark would have been followed by a huge statue of Ammon, carried on a golden platform. The statue would have been richly decorated, perhaps with precious gems and gold leaf, and it would have been surrounded by a retinue of priests and musicians. The streets would have been filled with the sound of drums and trumpets, and the air would have been heavy with incense. The great Sphinx of Giza has captivated the world for millennia. With its lion's body and human face, it stands as a symbol of the Egyptian civilization. But did you know that the Sphinx wasn't the only guardian of the afterlife? Across Egypt there were countless Sphinx, each with its unique features and significance. Some were made of stone, like the Great Sphinx, but others were made of wood or metal. Some had wings, others didn't, and some had human bodies instead of lions' bodies. But no matter what they looked like, they all served the same purpose: to protect the dead on their journey to the afterlife. The most famous winged Sphinx is probably the one that guarded the tomb of Tutankhamun, made of red granite. It was smaller than the Great Sphinx, but just as imposing. It had a human head, either of Tutankhamun or of his father, Akhenaten, and the body of a falcon, the sacred animal of Horus, the sky god. The wooden Sphinx were usually more abstract, with the head of a hawk or a pharaoh and the body of a lion. They were found throughout Egypt, often in tombs or temples, serving as protective spirits. The earliest Sphinx date back to the Old Kingdom, around 2680 to 2180 BC. They were initially associated with the sun god Ra, but later they became associated with other deities as well. They were seen as divine beings themselves, or as intermediaries between the gods and humans, or as guardians of sacred places. So if you ever come across a Sphinx in your travels, take a moment to appreciate its power and mystery. You might just be in the presence of a divine being. Temples were the beating heart of Egyptian life. They weren't just places of worship, they were centers of administration, education, and culture. They were also the key to understanding the Egyptian view of the cosmos. To the Egyptians, the world was a reflection of the divine order, and it was their duty to live in harmony with that order. This meant keeping everything in balance, both in their personal lives and in their society as a whole. It's hard to overstate the impact of temples on Egyptian life. They were the focal point of every city, the gathering place for the community, and the link between the earthly and the divine. So if you want to understand the ancient Egyptians, you have to start with their temples. Thanks for joining us today. We've explored the vibrant festivals, the awe-inspiring architecture, and the enigmatic Sphinx of ancient Egypt. Remember, there's more history waiting for you. Click the subscribe button and join our growing community of history enthusiasts. Until next time, keep exploring and stay curious. If you're new here, thanks for joining us. And now it's time for bed. The sky is dark, the river is still, and soon the sun will begin its slow journey toward the horizon. In the distance, a small bird calls. Closer, the sound of a donkey braying. And somewhere near, the rhythmic splashing of water. Imagine yourself settling down now after a busy day working the fields or trading in the marketplace or guarding the temple. Your hands are calloused, your body tired, your eyes heavy. But as the evening settles in, a smile touches your lips. The day was hard, yes, but it was honest work. Honest work that keeps the fields planted, the goods flowing, and the rituals pure. And tomorrow, when the sky is light again, you will do it all again. What will you dream about tonight? As darkness falls, what stories will fill your head? Will you dream of family, of friends, of the pharaoh, or Ra himself? Perhaps you won't dream at all, instead finding rest in sleep's soft embrace. Whatever thoughts drift across your mind, know that they are shared by many tonight. Throughout Egypt, men and women are saying their prayers. Families are eating dinner. Lovers are sharing secrets beneath starlight. Life continues, and so will ours. Let us tell you one more story about a boy named Haru. He lives in a village on the edge of the desert. His father is a farmer, his mother, a weaver. And Haru dreams of faraway places. When he is older, he says he will travel the length and breadth of Egypt. He will see the great temple of Karnak and the Valley of the Kings. He will visit the oasis of Sivwa and the city of Ak. One day he tells his father, "I will even go to Nubia and buy you an elephant tusk." His father smiles. Dreams are important, he says, but life is here. Life is in the soil. Life is in the river. Life is in the seasons, in the sowing and the harvest. Yes, he says, looking at the sunset, life is also in the sky. Watch how Ra paints the clouds every evening. Do you not see the beauty? Can you not feel the breeze on your skin? That too is life. Life is here, son, and life is everywhere. Haru nods, knowing his father speaks the truth. Life is in the details. He thinks the feel of the sun on his face, the taste of dates in his mouth, the sound of a hawk overhead. Even when he dreams of distant cities, life is still in the details. Life is the patterns in the sand, the shadows cast by the trees, the steps on his staircase. Life is the songs his mother hummed as she wove. Life is in the stories whispered by old men. Life is in the scarab beetles scuttling across the ground. Life is in everything that moves, grows, and changes. Life is the Nile River, always flowing, always becoming. Just as the river carves the land, life shapes us all. Our actions carve our fates. The choices we make today will shape our lives tomorrow. Life is precious, his father says, because it is fleeting. It slips through our fingers like sand. That is why we must make each moment count. That is why we must honor the gods and our ancestors. Keep the fields healthy and the family strong. That is why we must listen to the whispers of the wind, for it carries the secrets of the universe. And when our time comes, we must face it with courage and dignity. And so, Heru, live your life each day as if it were your last. For who knows what wonders tomorrow may bring. Heru looks up at the sky, his heart filled with wonder. The stars are out now, and the moon casts her soft light over the land. Soon the first rays of daylight will fade and the darkness will deepen. The world is quiet, but not silent. Listen closely. Can you hear the frogs croaking in the marsh? Can you hear the owls calling in the trees? Can you hear the desert winds whispering tales of long ago? These are the sounds of the night, the symphony of the shadows, the music of the moon. Even in the darkest hours, life goes on. Insects chirp, animals stir, the river flows, the world breathes, and somewhere, someone is dreaming. Perhaps it is a young boy named Heru lying in his reed hut, listening to the night sounds, dreaming of adventures yet to come. Or perhaps it is you, lying on your mat, watching the flickering flames dance before you, letting the warmth of the fire fill you with peace. For life is precious because it is fleeting. It slips through our fingers like sand, like the grains of sand slipping through an hourglass. But just as the hourglass does not run out of time, neither does life. Each grain has its place, each moment its purpose. Life is precious because it is a gift from the gods, a blessing to be cherished each day, no matter how hard or easy, joyful or sorrowful it may be. The secret to a long and happy life, the old men say, is to live each day to the fullest, to seize the opportunities that come your way and to face the challenges that test you with courage and grace. For life is not just about living. It is about thriving, growing, learning, and leaving your mark on the world. So open your eyes, open your heart, and open your mind to all the possibilities that life has to offer. Embrace the unknown, for it holds the key to your destiny. Trust in the gods, for they guide your every step. And trust in yourself, for you are stronger than you think. Go now, little one, and live your life to the fullest.